Imagine for a moment, we live in a world where everyone and every company knows about their transformative purpose. And together, we are creating a better world than how we found it. Good day, and thank you for listening to the Transformative Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Aaron. In every episode, we talk to people who are changing our world for the better. I believe positivity brings out the best in us, and this podcast is all about inspiring our listeners to discover your North Star, so that together we can co-create a brighter future for the next generation. If you want to receive updates about future episodes, remember to subscribe to this channel. And to learn more about transformation, you can also pick up a copy of my new book, Reborn Digital, in major bookstores in Hong Kong. Today, we're going to touch on a somewhat emotional topic: driving DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in organization. Our guest today is Sudesh Thevasenabathy. He is the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Manulife, a leading international financial services group. Sudesh is responsible for driving diversity and all-inclusion global gender for Asia as part of the global DEI organization. Sudesh grew up in Malaysia and is passionate about business and cultural change. He has led major transformational programs at AXA, Merrill Lynch, and HSBC. His work and achievements are recognized by many of his peers. He was a winner of 2019 LGBT Plus Inclusion Award and was also featured as one of the top 50 LGBT Plus role model executives. Welcome to the Transformative Purpose podcast, Sudesh.
Hey, Aaron, how are you? Thanks for having me here.
Very well, thank you. How are you doing?
It's good. It's a wet day in Hong Kong. I mean, it's been raining, seriously, in summer.
Oh yeah, we just got black rain this morning.
I know. It's like my kids were stuck at home and I'm in the office. There you go.
Thank you so much for making time for this podcast. I'm very excited to talk to you about this elephant in the room and to get educated on this important topic. First of all, congratulations. I realize Manulife has received many DEI awards and recognitions this year. There's a Canada's Best Diversity Employers, Bloomberg Gender Equality Index, and the list goes on. And it must have been a phenomenal experience working for an organization where you're receiving such strong support.
You know what? That's the thing, Aaron. Winning awards is one thing, but actually being part of an organization that supports and drives those changes and does it because they want to do it, not because they have to do it. So there's a clear difference. So of course, if you notice, the world has changed drastically over the past couple of years, especially since last year in North America. And I keep telling people about this. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, whilst it is on the agenda of many organizations, it is still a reactive response. It is reactive because the world is changing, so you need to react. And I say many times, like I say, it is a very emotive topic. Somebody had to die in the US for people to wake up, right? If you put it that way, very bluntly, somebody has to lose a life for us to wake up. Somebody has to do something bad has to happen in the world for us to wake up. And I think it's nothing about the brands or the companies. It is about sometimes we humans, we are very responsive and reactive. But having said that, many organizations took that liberty and that change to wanting to, you know what, enough is enough. We have to start opening up, and a lot of changes have taken place in North America through Black Lives Matter and Asian hate. And as you can see, it's slowly trickling down to Asia. Could be faster, but I think it's still slow, but it's getting there.
Yeah, definitely. I think this whole DEI initiative is definitely a big topic. And I think it's also a topic where a lot of people are very I guess they are very concerned. They don't really know how to deal with it or handle these conversations.
We being Asians, I mean, we live in Asia. And sometimes when people used to tell me, so Black Lives Matter happening in North America, Asian hate happening in North America. And many of my colleagues in there, they're asking me, has there been any impact in Asia? Whatever's happening globally, has there been any impact? Honestly, I'm sure you may be thinking the same. There hasn't been any impact.
Yeah. I think where we live, we have a lot of first world problems.
We have other problems to think about, right? So, and to think about it. So yes, Black Lives Matter, we went out there. Thank you. Sorry to hear that. And then we forget. And then Asian hate happened. Oh, sorry to hear about that. And then we forget. Unless you have family in the US who may be experiencing such differences, you will not appreciate it because, like you said, we have our own problems, and also because we are ignorant to discrimination because we feel discrimination doesn't exist in Asia. We are that ignorant. And if I go back, the Asian race is the most racist race on the planet. We have been racist for thousands of years, right? And I think this goes back a long, long while. And racism and differences comes from three main areas. One, socioeconomics. Socioeconomics in the sense that how rich you are, how poor you are, and that will put you on a scale on whether am I discriminatory towards you or not. So that is one element. The next is religion. Religion defines who is the majority and who gets the better and the bigger piece of the pie. And that already is a form of discrimination and racism, whether you are in it or you're out. You're in the group or you're out of the group. My religion is better than yours. So that is second. The third is more scary, is politics. So politics is very nicely tied to socioeconomics and religion as well, depending on who votes for me, who is more popular. I tell you what to do. And with these three things, and covering this entire thing is our mom and dad, our parents, who have basically told us to just keep quiet and don't say anything. So when anything happens in terms of racism, don't say anything, just keep quiet and just put your heads down and just carry on working and living your life. So when the topic becomes so taboo and not to talk about, so we don't talk about it. So that is why when we don't talk about it, we think it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah. When I was growing up, I just thought it's a norm to be discriminated. So I was so I was born and raised in Hong Kong. I left for Australia when I was just before high school. I've experienced many different forms of discrimination when I was in Australia. There was one time, so me and a group of my friends, they were all born in Australia. They were all ABC. So we were lining up outside a nightclub. And when it got to our turn, we basically got declined from entering the nightclub. And the bouncer said to us, a guy hired out the whole venue, and he said, no Asians tonight.
Oh.
There was no social media back then. I couldn't voice out to anyone. We just thought it's expected. Just part of growing up and part of life experience.
But that's exactly it. And that's what my parents told me also when I was growing up in Malaysia. And in Malaysia, whilst the people are not racist, I mean, I grew up with amazing Malay and Chinese friends, close friends. And we can go to anybody's house and you are this very family type environment. But because of the policies and the way how different types of people are being treated, so it becomes systemic racism. So we treat it as norm. It is okay to be indifferent. You be treated different is normal because you are living in this country that doesn't belong to you. So even though I was born in Malaysia, I was always treated as a visitor, that I don't have the benefits of living in my own country, which I was born in. And many people, they make all those funny statements, go back to China, go back to India. But there's nowhere to go back to because we don't have family there. Where do I go back to? Where do you belong? Where is the roots? I think this is the problem with many global people now, where you are so diluted, you don't belong to how you look like. I mean, people ask you to go back to Europe. Where in Europe? I don't know. I'm born in Singapore. Where do I go? And so this is the thing. The globalization has happened in such a way that there's no where's home anymore.
So that you grew up in Malaysia and you now have an APAC role. You live in Hong Kong. With the societal issues that you have seen, I guess, sort of in the West versus Malaysia versus, Asia, Southeast Asia, are they, and you also brought up there are three different types of, I guess, discrimination. Are they, with the challenges that we are facing, are they quite similar or do you see differences?
Depending on where you live, you have different challenges and different kinds of learning. Like in North America, the Black Americans have different challenges because they came in as slaves. So, and when they left slavery and they went into the population, then they had different challenges because they were still being treated as slaves. Whereas in Asia, we have always been travelers, right? I mean, the Chinese traveled everywhere to sell perfumes and opium and silk, and the Indians traveled everywhere to sell spices. So we were always traders who went to different countries, and what ended up in the trading, we ended up settling down in those countries. Then along came the British, and the British basically, they were in their colonization of the world. They brought along people from majority countries like China and India and took them everywhere in the world as their slaves to work in plantations, construction. Don't pay them anything, just give them basic food, and just they were basically slaves. So this is what has been happening globally. So But in Asia, because of our culture, we were told not to speak up. In North America, people speak up because that is not the culture. So I think there's a main difference. The problem is still the same. We are all different, but the way that we can speak up is different.
Mhm. So at what point did you go, this is not right, and you want to do something about it? Was there a particular incident or a conversation that you had with somebody which sort of pushed
Wow,
you
so much, so
to what
much
you're
has
doing now?
happened. So I mean, apart from growing up in Malaysia and already first-hand experience, right? Not being given the fair treatment like everybody else. But coming into Hong Kong was interesting. When I sit in the train, nobody will sit next to you. Yeah, people stand away. Getting a place to stay, the landlords won't give it to you because they say that when you cook, the food is smelly and the house becomes smelly, which is strange for me. So I do experience these differences. When you walk into certain shops, people give you that look. They think that you're going to steal their stuff, which doesn't make any sense. And I think that was small things because I mean I grew up with it, so it was normal for me. But then when I started seeing people from other minority communities also feeling the same, like people from the LGBT community who can't even speak up and have to hide who they love just because they don't want people to know, because they don't want to be treated different, or people who are disabled and they have to hide their disabilities because they don't want to be treated different. Then suddenly you start seeing this pattern. And this pattern is very scary where people who are born into a situation that they couldn't control, they are in a space where they couldn't control. And because it is beyond their control, they're being treated different. And to cover it all up, then I see my kids. And I don't want my kids to grow in a world where they have to be treated different. And I want my kids to be treated fair and equal and same. And I want all their friends to be fair and equal and same. So I think that's where the wake up call was, Aaron, to wake up and you know what? If the least I can do is to make that change from the role that I can play. So that is where I delve into this world.
Yeah, I love how you brought it up. My kid has also become my, I guess, source of motivation. When you look at the little ones, you know, every day I think about, you know, what can we do as humans to make this world better? I don't want my kid. So there was something happened last night. So my kid is only 2.5. So we asked a guy to come and fix up the internet, and I offer the gentleman a cup of water, and the mug was in black. My son asked me, what's the color of that mug? And I said, black. He's only 2.5, and he said, "Oh, that's same as the color of his skin of the gentleman because it's a bit tan." It's amazing, like how kids pick up these things. I mean, obviously he didn't do it on purpose, but I think as parents, it is our responsibility to prepare them with the right skills and right awareness, so that they can, you know, work with other people and help us, you know, co-create a world for everyone.
Yeah, that's absolutely well said, Aaron. I mean, kids are like sponges, right? They absorb everything that they see and they hear and you do. So we as parents, we can only control a certain percent of our time that they are in front of us. So when they're at home with us, we can teach them all the right things, but they are exposed to the world and they are exposed to friends and teachers and whoever, and somebody said something. I had one experience, interestingly enough. This was in Hong Kong many years ago. I was in a building where I took onto the lift, and a mom and her child got into the lift on one of the higher floors and were going down. And the little girl, she looked at the mom and said in Cantonese, using a derogatory term used to call Indians in Hong Kong. And they spoke in Cantonese. She told, Mommy, this man is this color, and told them, Acha, basically Acha. And the mother just didn't say anything and just kept quiet. And so I had to do my little mini education and I spoke to both of them in Cantonese. And I told them that this is not a nice thing to say and it is quite offensive. And please don't use this next time because it sets a very bad example. But I said it very nicely in Cantonese. Yeah, I speak the language a little bit, so it helps in a
To
way.
understand the context.
Exactly. But they were shy and and the mom got shy and walked out. But I didn't mean to do it, honestly. I felt bad after saying that, you know. But in a way, I think maybe I also educated the mom that this is the start. If your child is saying something and you do not address it then they think it's okay.
Yeah. I cannot agree more. There were instances where I heard the grandparents have taught their grandchildren to say, 乖咯, which is not very respectful. And you try to, but sometimes you got to pick your battle. With your grandparents and older generation, you try to bring up this topic, and and sometimes they will go, "What's the issue?" I've been using this term for the last 60 years. No one has said anything about it.
Well, exactly when the grandparents or your parents actually go to the US, for example, and wait till when they hear somebody calling them in a funny name. So then sometimes it hits you, right? It's like, I am being discriminated. And this is the thing about we in Asia, especially people in Hong Kong and all that, because we are sheltered. We are sheltered. We think we are majority and we lead and we are better than everybody else. But the moment we move into another country and we suddenly become the minority. And when you become the minority, when somebody treats you negatively, oh, how dare you say about that to me? I am being discriminated. But hello, when you were back home, how were you to
Yeah.
others? So this is it.
It's a classic Maslow hierarchy, right? You get pushed down the list. You don't often think about
Of
safety and other
course.
thing until it becomes a necessity.
Exactly, absolutely that. I mean, but this is a wake-up call to many people, right? But you say that, Adam, as we are all talking about. So now the hot topic is racism, but we still don't talk about people with disabilities. I think that is another gray area that nobody talks about enough. And in terms of from hiring managers, from leaders to giving opportunities to, again, people become disabled not by choice. And why do we treat them different? So I think this is some of the areas. I mean, inclusion is such a huge topic. It is broad and it is not easy, honestly. And it's just that you need to put a bit of a level of humanity as you do things like this.
What you've said has been fascinating, and we've been focusing a lot on, I guess, more of a societal level. Let's change our topic a bit more to what you do at a corporate level. For people who don't have exposure to, I guess, DEI, how would you describe, diversity, equity, and inclusion? Is it part of ESG, an extension of it, something separate? You mentioned about it's taken someone's lives for us to understand the importance of it. The world at large is still very reactive to this topic. So just want to hear your view on this.
So DEI is okay, it's very new to many people globally. But the conversation of inclusion started many years ago through the gender movement, where we were hoping to find equality between male and female in women in leadership and from the Me Too movement. So we saw all those changes. We want to have ample representation of gender on leadership and on the boards. And then started off 5, 6 years ago on the LGBT front, where we wanted to ensure that who you love doesn't denote how you perform. So it doesn't matter. So we want to bring that inclusion into space. So then we do have a lot of minorities that are slowly coming up from race and disability and thoughts and all kinds of stuff. But at the end of the day, the company that you want to build, the reason you're doing it is for your customers. If you put on your business lens for now. So whatever work that you do, whether you are in consulting, you are in retail, hospitality, manufacturing, the end user, the end customer, you cannot choose. You can't choose who uses your product, right? And because you don't know, they can be from different minority communities. So you can't control. You are building this product. But if you are seen to be monocolored, mono-gendered, mono whatever, the customer will see this and they can choose not to use your product. So you may be only selling to a particular set of people who look like you and act like you and think like you. But the world is big. The world is huge, and which means you have basically confined your customer space and your reach to the audience. So if as a company, you are seen to be more inclusive of all types of community members, all types of people, your customers will also notice this, and that helps in your brand building. So your brand, if you portray your brand as very inclusive, then your customers will see it and then they will buy it. So from a business angle, purely, that's one. From an employee angle, in terms of having the right skills in your organization, when we all know it is very hard to find good people into your company. It's either sometimes through word of mouth, or even if you write the best looking JD, that does not guarantee you getting the best type of people onto the job. And because the skill pool is small. But if your company allows for all kinds of skills coming in, suddenly you open up an opportunity to getting skills that you wouldn't have noticed existed, because you suddenly realize that, oh wow, this particular community have this particular type of skills. I never knew. And then you hire them. So then now your participation is based on talent and skill, no longer about who or what you are. And then suddenly you see the ideas and the concepts being generated in the company is strong and powerful, which will then generate new services and new products, which will then generate new business through new communities which you may not have sold before. And then that kind of creates a huge cycle. And it's only good. There's nothing bad about it, because you get more money at the end.
Right, okay. It's interesting you brought up the employee part. I read a research from Glassdoor recently, and I think the latest poll shows that about 76%, four in five people now consider having a diverse workforce is something that they will consider when they're evaluating a company or evaluating an offer. Is it a trend that you're seeing in your organization as well?
Same trend, especially from the younger population. So the fresh graduates, the new younger generations. I think this is beyond Gen X, it's like Gen Z and Gen Ys who are now coming in, who are more tuned to the world, because they are a bit more rebellious than us, because we older folk,
And they
we,
have
we go
everything
with
they
the
need.
flow. Exactly. We older folk, we go with the flow, we do as you're told, and we just get stuff done. But the younger folk who are seeing all these changes in the world, and they are a bit more rebellious, and they want to ensure that they are being part of a bigger community of true passion. For them, the job and the career and the salary is not as important of doing the right thing. And I've seen that in my case. I'm sure you're seeing that in yours as well, that they believe doing the right thing is more important than getting a salary. So that is why, in fact, we have been doing a couple of interviews, and we have realized that I'm part of HR, and many of our candidates coming in asking these questions. And when they ask, when the recruiter asks, what question do you have for us? They always ask, tell us about your culture and your values. And this is a standard question that
So you're being interviewed.
the employees, exactly, the candidates are asking us. So we have to be prepared.
Hey, people who tend to ask these questions, they tend to come from sort of the middle class family or grassroots. Do you see a difference, or is it more universal?
It's becoming more universal. I think it's just in the life of being in a university, right? So in the university, you mix with everybody. And I think now I see notice kids, whether you're rich or poor, it doesn't matter anymore. It's like you are in class, you are the same. You can be rich with a silver spoon, so what? You're not popular enough like me. And if you fight for a cause, I'm sure a lot of kids now, they want to go and clean the ocean and clean the river, and they believe that using plastic is bad. And when my daughter sees me using a plastic straw, she gives me that evil stare. Oh boy, I get an evil
Sorry, I did that
stare.
with my grandparents.
So the kids these days, they don't see that anymore. And I think it's just wonderful. I think it's wonderful that we never had those opportunities with our parents and our grandparents, and ours do.
Mm. I think sometimes it goes back to really not taking our life for granted, right? Everything that we have today, smart devices. I watched Lion King when I was 18. My son is only 2.5. He's watching Lion King on YouTube.
I know.
He doesn't need to worry about money. He doesn't need to worry about shelter. And I'm sure when he gets a little bit older, he can think about all the other, contribution he can make to the society.
I mean, that helps with our agenda in the company, right? So as you know what the community wants, you know what your customers want. Then when we define agendas and strategies in the company, and that's what we do. So we develop strategies for the organization. So as we have a business plan and business strategy, we need to have a people strategy. And the people strategy looking at the kind of skills and the talents that you want to bring into the company that goes beyond the normal people that you usually hire. So this is where you look out to the minority communities, communities who have the skills but may not have the opportunity to stand out. So we just have to go looking for them.
So what does it mean to be a DEI organization? I noticed that Manulife advocates 3 pillars. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's a talent, culture, and community. Could you share with us a bit more?
So for us, at least the three things are we are very clear. So from a talent angle, we want to ensure that we have a very diverse talent pool so that we can be able to address all the different societal and country needs. Because, I mean, we operate in at least in 11 markets in Asia, and globally, we are huge. We have been around for over 100 years. And the community is changing, people are changing. And I think having coming from Canada, it's very strong Canadian values of inclusion. I think that sets it aside that it's very important to ensure we have the right talent, we have the right opportunities for our community, and we are supporting the community not just by giving a check. I mean, if you see many companies will go and do a CSR event with an NGO and give a nice big check with many zeros, and there you go. That was my CSR event. We don't just do that. We go beyond the zeros and circles. We actually spend time with them to see what we can do to support you directly and eventually bring you in as an employee in the future. And that has really helped to raise the brand awareness and eventually customer awareness.
Because I think customers these days, I guess information easily accessible on the internet. They really want to know where they're buying from and why are they buying from certain brands.
I mean, we all do that. I mean, see what happened with was it Volvo before many years ago, and we suddenly Volvo was always being sold as the most safest car brand in the world, right? And suddenly they found out some of the safety is being questioned. People just stop
Yep.
buying. And but again, that is the thing, your perception. And like Coke, we all know it is sugar.
Mm-hmm.
If you drink a lot of that, it kills you. But how they are changing the brand perception and the values, and how they're giving back to the community, and how they're helping underprivileged and minority communities, suddenly the brand perception
Mm-hmm.
changes.
Yep.
That helps.
Yep. And Apple is another example that I frequently quote in case study. You know, if we open up a Windows computer, no one will take a look at what we're using. But as soon as someone uses an Apple, you sort of look at them differently.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
You think they're more
You're using
creative.
an Apple.
You just think they're more innovative and more creative.
Remember when the days of iMac, when you had all the different, we used to ask people, hey, what color is your PC? Is it the pink or the blue one?
And that's only possible because year after year, Apple has been able to not just innovate, but also disrupt major industry and how people actually, utilize different products and services in those industry. Your music, entertainment, MP3 player, and obviously sort of the computer and hardware industry as well.
But you know what? A computer is still a computer, right? So it's depending on how you sold the computer. You sold the computer that it can do a lot more things that you value. You value music, you value creativity, and it just rode on it. That I think is brilliant.
Yeah. Let me try another question. So you've touched on a bit on this sort of at the macro level. How has this year been in terms of sort of DEI agenda, sort of at a broader level from where you see it? Are you happy with the progress? And what areas, I guess, as a whole, we could do more collectively?
So, a great question. I mean, I'm never happy. I'm very impatient all the time. You know, for all the baby steps that we do, I still feel we can do a lot more. But definitely, as a company, we have done a lot just from the past year alone in terms of our impact. So this DEI team that I'm part of is a brand new team. We were just formed like 9, 10 months ago globally. So the team itself is very new. But even in this short period of time, there's a lot of impact has been made globally from in terms of participation of gender equality, in terms of leadership and in board memberships. We have a lot more stronger women gender leaders now. Our noise and voice in inclusion on LGBT front has been far-reaching. We have started talking a lot more on racial inclusion and disability inclusion. So suddenly it's changing. The narratives are changing. Our recruitment leaders, our TAs, our talent recruiters are actively looking at hiring people of all kinds because they have been trained into sensitivity training to making sure that they understand the differences and then they hire people not because of how they are or who they look like, is what they have. And that is obviously already a big thing. We have done a lot of policy changes in recruitment changes. We are sponsoring a lot of local minority communities globally. You know what? Some of these policies might please some people and some may not please others, right? We can't please everybody. And I think that is the same with any other company that is embarking on the same. There are certain pockets of people that you will not be happy with. And there will be certain people who say that, what about me? How can you do this? This is not in line to what I believe in. So we have to work along it. We have to work along the lines that the world is changing. And please join us on the train. The train is not stopping. The train is moving. So you can either choose to follow the train or
Hop off the train.
hop off the train, the next station, and hop on another train that going on your direction. So it is the world. It is.
I think a lot of the listeners on this podcast will be interested in how do you handle these difficult conversations? How do you influence sponsorships? How do you effect policy changes? And how do you introduce these inclusion themes into your sort of standard HR recruitment processes? And
So there's two ways of doing it, Aaron. So one way is top down, right? You just do it and follow. Okay, this is other policy, these other changes, this is the KPI metrics. Just follow because this is the brand values. By doing that, people will do it just because they have no choice. And then this is where the passion and the realism, when it starts hitting the ground, because it is just a policy, I've got no choice, I have to follow. And what happens there is, yes, you will hit your targets, you will be out there winning awards and doing all kinds of stuff. But when the person who is leading it leaves the organization, everything crashes because it was not built into the company. Then it's the other way around, where you do bottom up. Bottom up in the sense that people totally understand why we are doing this because you have given them an opportunity to speak up and stand out. So suddenly it is now ingrained in the company that there's inclusion is real, inclusion is important, storytelling is important. And then some of us, we are active storytellers. And people resonate more with stories than policies. It's easy to do a KPI and a policy, but people don't remember it. But you tell a story, people remember stories. So this is where I see real impact happening, where now if the person who's leading it leaves the company, doesn't matter because the values has been ingrained in the
culture.
company.
Yeah.
Yes. So that is why there's a difference.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the initiatives that worked out and what were some that didn't work?
So last 2 weeks ago, on June 17, was the first time we organized a global afternoon of reflection and learning where, as a company, 37,000 employees were given an opportunity of 6 hours to not work in that afternoon, but to totally immerse themselves into all topics related to DEI. And that was huge, where no meetings, no work, but they were part of they could attend a collection of events and panels and conversations and ERG events and all kinds of stuff and learning knowledge for 6 hours. And that was a big deal that for a company to take time off for 6 hours just to study. And that really worked. Some things may not work so well also, like certain policies that we were thinking of rolling out doesn't hit the mark because it was not communicated properly. For example, so we rolled out a transgender policy in North America, and transgender policy basically supports the conversion of the employee should they choose to take the path, including the post-operation and the mental health care support, which I think is brilliant, right? And not everybody does it. But the moment you start wanting to talk about those policies in this part of the world, in Asia, it becomes a challenge. And it becomes a challenge because societal norms doesn't really support. So you can't, sometimes certain policies you can't roll out globally. So you have to do one part first, and then you need to have individual conversations and convincing and telling people why this is important. And that plays most of my work actually.
Mm-hmm. So having that readiness and I guess different enablers which reinforce your initiatives are quite important.
You know what? We have to, if you are doing this work, we have to be prepared for many yeses and many no's. And it's normal. And when you get many no's, the no's actually is a challenge for you to make sure that we manage to convert that to a yes. Or is there a way of listening to the no's? Again, we must never ever discriminate people who tell you no. That is also a form of discrimination. So when people tell you no, talk to them and find out why are they saying no. There may be a reason to it. And let's find a middle ground.
Mm. I pick up a couple of interesting metrics from the corporate website. A couple of goals that are quite bold. The first one is to have 30% of your leadership roles represented by BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color by 2025. And the second one is to have your annual graduate hire of up to at least 25%. What's the progress on those? And are we going to see similar metrics sort of at the Asia level, or are there already similar metrics that are tracking your progress already?
So, been very successful in the US. So we have already been working with a lot of the Black universities and Black schools in trying to get the right kind of graduates coming in. We have the MLK scholars supporting through the internship, and we're looking at our current headcounts and the current resources to make sure that we are supporting of color and Black Indigenous employees as well. And it is working successfully. We are on track in trying to achieve the targets. In Asia, the racial targets have not set yet. We are still looking at the gender, and we have moved up quite a bit. Across Asia, AVPs are around 40% women and over 30% VPs, and it's getting higher, which is great from a gender perspective. Again, Asia has always been later on the game, right? We were a bit slower in adopting. So the next we are looking at for the next few years is again, gender will continue, LGBT inclusion and awareness. Racial, instead of putting targets, we're going to start having more conversations because the perception of race is different to every country. How we define race in China is different to how we define race in the Philippines and in Singapore and in Malaysia, because race is different. So how do you do a carte blanche? What is race in the region? So we have to go on a more local, granular level. The other targets we are looking at is eventually having targets for hiring people with disabilities to Asia as well.
And for other organizations who want to become, I guess, as good as you are in terms of approaching the DEI agenda, how can they realize it, and how can they go about it?
You mentioned that word already, realize. I think that's the first bit, the realization that it is important. The world is changing, and if you want to be part of this changing world, you have to realize that you have to do it. So that's one. First is realize it. And second is nobody's expecting you to know everything. So seek help. Seek help. You can seek help from other organizations who are a bit ahead in DEI. The thing about DEI, I noticed is we are a very small community in Asia who really like to help each other. So like me, I'm part of this community of D&I professionals here in Hong Kong. There are about 80 organizations in a WhatsApp group, interestingly, and these are all DEI practitioners in Hong Kong, and we always help each other out. Hey, how do you do this? Hey, how do you do that? We meet for coffee, we sit together and we get it done, because it is no longer about sharing brand stuff. It is secret I can't share, because we are looking at it from a totality of changing community overall, not just your brand.
We all have to work together.
That's the only way. That's the only way, because that is success.
Hey, one last question I want to ask you, because you brought this up about this top-down and sort of bottom-up implementation approach. For some people who are on this podcast, they might want to influence or persuade the leadership that DEI is important. We need to do something about it, but the leadership team might not necessarily see it as an important agenda. For those people, how would you advise them?
So when I helped to form the D&I Council in AXA, my previous employer, and that was how it happened. It was just a few of us who sat together over coffee, and we realized that we need to do something to help the community. So what we did is we put together a proposal of the different elements of DEI, and we actually seek to present into senior leadership. And you know what? No senior management will say no, because these are people in the company who feel strongly about representing communities who are underrepresented, and they're doing this out of their own personal time and not impacting their work. And companies and leadership will actually appreciate it, because, oh wow, there's actually somebody who wants to do our work, because they'll be happy to let you do it. So that is how we started off in AXA, where it was formed by the grassroots. They formed the committee, they formed the DEI Council. It was supported by the leadership, and they were given funding, and then they became very big and popular. And in Manulife, it was a bit different, because we felt it was already important from day one. So it was already set up in the organization. So when I advise people now, I advise the same thing. Have a few people, get a few allies on the ground who thinks this is important get together and put a proposal and go and propose to your leaders, because these allies usually are the very influential ones in the company. So use this people and circle of influence to influence senior leadership. It usually works.
That's great word of advice there. Hey, thank you so much for your time, Sudesh. And it's great to have you on this podcast. And I think myself and the listeners on this podcast have learned a lot on this DEI topic and how we can go about changing the world.
Thank you so much for having me, Aaron. And anytime, if you think any of your listeners want to find out more, I'm more than happy. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. We can have a chat.
And where can people find you, Sudesh?
LinkedIn, Sudesh T. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Transformative Purpose. In each episode, we talk to inspirational people who are making our world better. Make sure to like, rate, and review. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, if you have questions or feedback, you can reach out at aaronpeng.co.